part 2 of section 4, or chapter 4 out of section 2. The next day and all throughout the week, Rick worked the telephone and kept records of sales and contacts. Between delivering the hash around town, I sat around the bizarre lobby of the Chelsea, smoked hash, and updated the ship's log. The art hanging or leaning against the hotel wall was so odd, so weird, so impossible to understand. I felt trapped by an intense ignorance. I couldn't tell what was hip and what was hideous, or what was sane or insane. Plus, the lobby seemed a spider web or trapped psychotic poets and artists, or so I guessed. Which ones were the real artists and which ones were the posers? Who did I want to meet? Who did I want to avoid? Perhaps they were just street people who had wandered in to flop down in the beat-up chairs and smoke pot. Or shoot up in the elevator. When I asked Rick his opinion of them, he told me they were Andy Warhol's movie star friends. Ever see Chelsea Girls? He asked. I had never heard of it. Well, half the cast is down there, he said. You ought to introduce yourself to them. Maybe you'll get into one of the films. I was too shy for that. I thought I saw Dennis Hopper down there the other day, he said. You know, from Easy Rider. Everyone hip stays here. Jane Fonda, Jimmy Page, Bob Dylan. The place is crawling with famous people. Why do you think we're here? I thought we were hiding. So I sat in the lobby with the ship's log and peered up at everyone exotic who walked through the front doors. And quickly I tried to write a few lines describing them. Nobody looked famous. They all looked tired and just strung out. The common difference between the men and women is the women had fresh lipstick, their one attempt at sanitary glamour. Otherwise, their clothes, especially their tights, platform shoes, and ratty hairstyles, were as frenzied as they were filthy. They had plenty of style, but did nothing all day but cat around. I had done a lot of nothing lately, and I was itching to get paid and move on. I knew a few writers had lived at the Chelsea. I asked a desk clerk, and he had given me a list of names of authors who had either visited or written entire books there. Mark Twain, O. Henry, Theodore Dreiser, Thomas Wolfe, William Burroughs, Allen Ginsberg, Nelson, Al Green, and Arthur C. Clarke. It was pretty impressive. I went down to the Strand bookstore and bought books by Chelsea authors. Naked Lunch by Burroughs and Look Homeward, Angel by Wolfe were a good start. And once again, I began to think about what I would do with myself after I got my money. I knew I wanted to write books, but I wasn't sure how to get started. I did know that I wasn't going to get anything done by smoking hash and sitting in the lobby of the Chelsea, no matter how cool it was to do so. By the second week, we had sold most of the hash, and the operation was winding down. We had made deliveries all over Manhattan, and I'd started to relax. I told myself if there were cops, they would have picked us up by now. And I was constantly surprised by who bought from us. A burned-out hippie, a well-dressed woman, a dull guy you'd never look at twice, a man in a fake wig and a mustache, a preppy college kid. We met them in the apartments, parking lots, coffee shops, high-rise lobbies, and on street corners. Each delivery was £50 or more. So a lot of money was changing hands, and after each score, Rick put the cash in a bank safe deposit box, and finally, after my constant begging, I was paid. Hamilton gave me a shot box of $10,000 in $10 bills. I loved my stash. I counted it. I rubbed my face in it. It smelled sweet and dirty. I played with it like a kid with a toy, and I straightened up all the bills so they were facing the same way. I bought rubber bands and wrapped each 100 and 1,000. It was glorious. I grinned from ear to ear. It was while I was seduced by the big pile of cash that Hamilton chose to ask if I wanted to sail the Beaver to England, where we would take a rest before heading out to wherever we could pick up another ton. He was eager to repeat the operation. The hitch was we couldn't buy from the same supplier because, as Rick revealed, they had paid the Moroccans in counterfeit American cash and didn't want to risk dealing with them again. They're probably pissed, Hamilton added, smiling at how clever he had been. I bet they'd give him a matching smile with a knife right across the throat if they ever caught him. He promised me a better cut of the deal. I had mixed feelings. Sure, I wanted more money, but I didn't look forward to spending 6 months on a boat with Hamilton. And no matter how hard I tried, I still had a nagging feeling we were being watched. And I told him I'd give it some thought, but I knew I was ready to take off. I wanted to get started on my future. I called a few colleges in New York and asked about writing programs. New York University had one, as did Hunter and Columbia. They all wanted to know if I'd come in for an interview. I hesitated. I wanted to go, but I just felt so weird. Here I was, hiding out in the Chelsea Hotel and wheeling a stolen shopping cart full of smuggled hash all over town. I just wanted to finish up the operation and clean up my act before arriving in person. To all the colleges I called them back, they wanted to send in information, but I didn't have an address. And then the shit hit the fan. It was Friday when all went to pieces very quickly. We sold almost all the hash. There were only a few £100 remaining. Hamilton and I were in the room when Rick called. He had another delivery request, and that would empty the boat. Hamilton wrote down the address and smiled broadly. He looked in the mirror and patted his beard in the Excuse me, you stay here, he said. Afterwards, Rick and I have to prepare the cash for shipment. I don't want to sail it over. We'll meet you back here for dinner. Okay, I said, and left the room. I had bought more film and wanted to take photos of the rooms where the writers had lived. I knew Thomas Wolfe had lived in room 831. I had recently finished Naked Lunch and wanted to see where Burroughs had been insane or brilliant or both. I figured I'd go down and ask the desk clerk if they could give me Burroughs' room number. I was on the second floor landing when I heard a scuffle downstairs by the front desk. "We're FBI," shouted a man. "Stop it." There was a fleshy slap of punches being thrown and Hamilton cursing. There were more punches, and I heard Hamilton cry out, Okay, don't hurt me, don't." They must have had him pinned down. I was frozen on the landing, unable to move. I couldn't see the front desk from where I was, and I didn't dare look around the corner to see exactly what was happening. But I didn't want to hear if he was going to rat me out or if they knew I was there. I could see the front door, and I watched the usual lobby druggies who crashed out across the furniture all day hop up and slink out the front door. As they did so, two scuffy men walked in. Suddenly, Hamilton shouted, "There they are. Those are the guys who own the boat." It was a stroke of genius. The FBI agents let them go for a moment as they ran towards the men he had fingered. At that moment, the scruffy men pulled out their own badges and hollered, "Treasury agents, stop." They had been tracking down the source of the American counterfeit money that showed up in Morocco, and by coincidence arrived at Chelsea just seconds after the FBI. It took the four of them a moment to check the badges, but by then Hamilton had sneaked down the back hall and out into the alley. The fed sounded like a horse posse giving chase. My heart almost burst, and I scampered back up the stairs. I ran down the room, unlocked the door, closed it, and locked from the inside. I grabbed my green duffel bag out of the closet, and I opened it up and checked on the cash and 5 kilos of hash I had taken as a tip. I opened my dresser drawer and threw in clean clothes. I hoisted my bag over my shoulder and I went out the back window. I was entirely in panic. There was a fire escape from my window that connected down the alley, but Hamilton had run that way, and I figured the police would be milling around out there. My best bet would be out through the front door. It was either that or wait for them to come get me. I couldn't wait, even if I wanted to. I was too frantic. I opened my door, scanned the hall, clutched my bag, took a deep breath, and walked down the steps, through the lobby, and out the front door. The entire time I felt an invisible hand about to grab my shoulder. My neck was clenched as hard as the tree stump. I was planning to flag a cab, but the traffic was backed up, so I just kept walking. And I lowered my head, dodging people, passing people, growling, pushing between them. I get further and further away. I went down to the 14th Street, and in the first subway station I came to, I had a token. I decided I would go back uptown to Penn Station. I bolted through the turnstile and took the train that arrived. I hopped on, but couldn't stand still. I pushed my way from car to car until I couldn't go any further. When I reached the front, I turned around, duffel bag on my shoulder, and waited to spot the eyes that were searching for me. At least I'd see them coming, but not yet. Nobody was on my trail. We pulled into a station and I hopped off and I looked at a map. I ran down a hall to another platform and took another train, then another, until I got to Penn Station. I ran to the Amtrak terminal and checked the departure board. I could go to Boston or Florida. I figured I knew Florida better. I could go hide out at Davy's place at the motel until I figured out what to do. The train didn't leave for an hour, so I went downstairs and found a movie theater. A new Leaf was playing. I bought a ticket and felt like Lee Harvey Oswald was hiding out. Walter Matthau and Elaine May were talking to each other, but I couldn't follow them. I sat there with my heart beating and sweat pouring out of me. I kept checking my watch. Finally, it was time, and I dashed out of the theater, up the stairs, and across the terminal of the platform where I hopped on the train and found a seat. Minutes went by, then the train began to move, and for a moment I thought I had made it. I've escaped. I felt a little clever, but my heart didn't stop beating quickly until I went to the bathroom and swallowed a couple of grams of hash and later fell asleep in my seat and woke up in North Carolina. Even then, I was still a wreck. When I got to Fort Lauderdale, I stumbled off and called Davies. She had a room available, and I took a cab to the King's Court. I was so happy to be there, and Davy was happy to see me. "Welcome back to the Alamo," she hollered when I opened her door. "What are you doing in town?" "Just passing through," I said. "I sailed a boat up to New York, and I'm on my way back to St. Croix." "Well, stay as long as you want," she said, and gave me a key to my old room. "You'll see half your friends are still here." Walked across the asphalt, opened the door, and put my bag down, and I double-locked the door and pulled the curtains. I had made it. But I felt worse, and was worse off than when I had first entered this room less than a year before. I sat down on the edge of my bed and held my face in my hands. I jumped up. I went to the yellow bathroom, and I took off my clothes, and I turned on the shower, and as I waited for the water to warm up, I stared in the mirror at my face. The yellow wasn't a color that looked good on me, but it was home. I figured I'd take a shower, settle down, and planned out what to do next. Dun dun dun. Getting ready for section 3.